Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of the Football Draft podcast. Episodes are released every Wednesday. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a follow, subscribe if you're on iTunes or YouTube. Today I'm joined here with Ben and our first ever guest on the Football Draft podcast, Ross.
Yeah, Ross is a United fan like myself. He also works for the United Journal on Twitter, which is used to release news and spread things about Man United.
So Ross, why don't you tell us how you began supporting Manchester United in the first place?
Yeah, well, a diehard fan from a young age. Remember I used to go to my aunt and uncle's house after school every day, and there happened to be a Man United game on, and I just got ingrained into the Man United fan club. And I remember I was bought a Man United shirt when I was really young, and ever since then it's just been like a religion. It's just been a diehard fan. So and I know in the house here my brother is a Liverpool fan, so there's always been a bit of conflict there. But yeah, it's just Manchester United till we die. So yeah, that's where it started.
That's really interesting. So your aunt got you involved in supporting United, not like your parents or anything?
Oh no. It's very much my aunt and uncle. My mum is a Liverpool fan and my dad is a West Ham fan, so it's just me in the house that's a United fan.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflict in the house, but it's always good fun. But yeah,
friendly competition.
Oh, of course, friendly. It can get very we can have our arguments, but yeah, usually always friendly.
Yeah, that sounds good. So what's it like working for the United Journal, and how long have you been there and stuff?
Oh, it's been great. I've been there about 6 months now, and it's great just to have a network of United fans who are really concerned with the latest news and stuff with Man United. I know that before that I might not have been as well up on United news and what was going on, but being part of the United Journal now, it's given me that sort of opportunity to hear from insiders, and and it's my responsibility then to broadcast that on Twitter for others to hear. I remember I followed United Journal for a long time before I actually joined them, and they put out like a recruitment. They're looking for writers, and I signed up, and it took a while, but it's all been worth it. So I'm very, very grateful to be part of a great wee community here, and it's just been great.
Yeah, that sounds like a good platform, and I've seen that it's been growing, so we'll see where it can go. So let's just dive straight into the first game. Obviously, Chelsea United played at the weekend, 0-0 draw. One of the biggest things from the game that I took away was a bit of a shambles from the officials, which seems to happen a lot this season, where Harry Maguire seems to say that the referee was told by VAR to give the penalty for a Callum Hudson-Odoi handball, but chose not to give it because he was worried about the talk and the backlash that might come after the game. Would you guys not say that that's a bit embarrassing, and the referee should get a kind of punishment for affecting the game just for his own personal reasons?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would hate to think that that's causing us not to get a fair and just penalty in that sense. I know that we've had a lot of decisions that have gone our way because of VAR, but I mean, I think it's a disgrace really that there's any inkling that we might not get it because of controversy that's outside of the actual physical game itself. I think it's really, but it's one of those things. What do you believe, really? But
does the ball not actually hit the United and Hudson-Odoi's hand? I was seeing like a replay.
Yeah, I know it hits Hudson-Odoi's hand first, and then it hits Greenwood's arm.
Right.
Like I when I first watched it, I thought it was a Greenwood handball. I saw no thing. I didn't think anything of it. But it was only when you sort of saw the replay afterwards that I was like, yeah, it's a handball. But I just think you can't think that by the rules that VAR has set this season, that is a handball and it's therefore a penalty. I don't get any other argument for it not being. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get that Greenwood's arm touches it, but that's only after the offence of Hudson-Odoi. So I don't know, man. It just makes me really confused about what constitutes a penalty and what constitutes handball, and I think many other people feel the same way.
Well, Ben mentioned briefly there was the referee was worried that there would be backlash if he did give the penalty, no? And I had spoken to Ben yesterday about this, and I was saying, well, does that mean Harry Maguire is like backing the ref and putting like the ref in priority instead of like the team?
I get what you mean, but I think it's more trying to back Shaw, because I saw that he's not going to face offence for the implied bias that he through his interview. So I think it's more just backing the team and backing the player more than trying to silence the moment. And I think you sort of have to do that as a captain, and obviously Solskjaer backed Maguire up, but I just think it's freedom of expression, and if there was any inkling of that happening on the pitch, it should be talked about. There should be no quelling that or trying to quiet that down. That should be talked about. And as Ben rightly mentioned, if there was any sort of sniff of that, you'd be thinking it would be, for offence for the ref, definitely.
Do you see where the referee's coming from? In a previous podcast, Ben and I said how Mike Dean was facing like death threats and all sorts online. So as a referee managing such a high profile game, United versus Chelsea, handball, very controversial, in the back of your mind you must be thinking, hold on a second, I don't want the treatment Mike Dean is getting. I'm just going to let this one slide and play out.
But my argument is that Mike Dean was getting death threats for making wrong decisions and premature decisions that after the game or even during the game, the commentators and pundits were saying that wasn't the right decision. But in this instance, the referee was worried about getting death threats or whatever, but then he gave the wrong decision with that thinking in his head. Like, he didn't. If he gave the penalty, he wouldn't have been given any backlash because it's the right decision. It's a handball. Yeah, the previous seasons you'd think that's not a handball, but the rules currently, that's a handball and that's a penalty. So for him to then think, oh, what if I get death threats, but then actually still give the wrong decision, I think it's just made it worse for himself, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I agree. But I think that element of about thinking what's going to happen after the decision shouldn't really be in football. I get what he's thinking about, but that's not what you do in football. You make the decision in the moment, and most of the time you have to make the right one, and that's what VAR is. That's the purpose of VAR. If we look at it, the purpose of VAR is to correct some mistakes that the referee makes, to make the refereeing decisions on the pitch as fair as they can be. But I think it's actually doing the opposite now, and the rules of VAR have meant that the referee then gets to make a decision about whether to follow them or not, and I just think it's a disgrace,
Yeah, completely agree. It's quite easy to get into the whole VAR sand.
It is.
So I think we should let's talk a little bit about the game as well. 0-0. Was it a 0-0 game? Deserved, not deserved? I personally didn't watch the game, so I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it.
Yeah, I watched the game, and I think if that penalty incident didn't happen, a 0-0, I would have taken that considering what happened in the game. Neither team, other than that incident, didn't create that much. It seemed to be that the midfields and the defences were solid enough that they were able to defend against any threat. And it seemed to be that Man United were pressing them, while Chelsea, because under Thomas Tuchel, they've been more possession-based. So it just seemed to be that type of game that neither team really gave a goal-scoring threat. So a 0-0 was probably the fair result anyway, but just because of that penalty incident, it's kind of like, well, it's kind of thrown away a potential win for United, but I would say 0-0 would be fair.
Something you mentioned, lack of creativity there from a United team, and I've mentioned this before, and it has to be brought up again. Bruno Fernandes is not performing against the top six.
Well,
am I wrong for saying that?
I mean, technically, you're not wrong, but I think that in many ways, and I'm looking at this as a United fan, feel free to call me wrong, but in many ways, Bruno is above criticism. Bruno has single-handedly brought this team from really bad ways, and I just think that he's lifted both the morale of the team and the attitude to a place that we haven't actually reached where we can go. and I know that we're capable of more, but I think that in many ways, just because Bruno doesn't happen to be performing against the top six, we shouldn't really be focusing on Bruno. Bruno is above criticism in many ways, so we should be looking at the likes of Rashford and why he's not performing, the likes of Martial, what's wrong, what's happening here. Our front three have been massively underwhelming this season, and it has to be said. You know, I have no problem saying that. You back your players, but it has to be said that they've been fairly underwhelming. And if it wasn't for the likes of Bruno's individual efforts and Cavani getting us a few goals here and there, relying on individual efforts, we wouldn't be in second place. So I think instead of focusing on what Bruno's not doing, we should be focusing on what the front three are doing, and that should be the conversation we have, to be honest. That's just me anyway.
Do you think perhaps that Bruno Fernandes being the key in United's squad, being the main guy, that he's lacking the same quality around him? So as like an opponent in the top six, you're thinking, right, we'll mark Bruno Fernandes at the game. Job done. Their creativity's gone.
100%. And, you know, I've said it for ages. If Bruno gets injured, we're screwed. You know, because we have no other creative threat really to Bruno's quality in the midfield. I personally love Scott McTominay, but he's just no Bruno Fernandes. So I just think that as you're right, you know, if someone says, you know, mark him out of the game, that's job done. So I think we need a summer transfer window where the Glazers go into their back pockets and get players of Bruno's quality and surround them and build the team on Bruno. That's what we need to do, because we can't just rely on Bruno to get us out of games. We can't. So
hold on a second. You guys brought in Van de Beek for, was it 30 million? Well, you say bring in the likes of Bruno Fernandes. Van de Beek, 30 million from Ajax, was arguably the best you could have gotten during that summer window, and he's been benched the whole time.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but I just don't. I think he doesn't seem to be in all these plans at the minute, and I don't really get why. I really wanted Bruno to get some playing time when Pogba got injured, but it's just not looking likely. I mean, I don't have much for you in that way. I can't really defend Ollie, because Van de Beek is a quality player. We've seen it from the little game time that he's had. You know, he deserves game time. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I find it weird because people are already like starting to say, like, should he leave? Should he regret moving to Man United? Should he even maybe go out on loan for a season or two? And it's kind of a shame because he's a good player. He's a great player. You could see it from his time at Ajax. He deserved a big move to a bigger club. Obviously, it seemed like he could have been going to Real Madrid for a long time. But then he came to United, and it excited the fans because he knew the quality that he had. And then you were thinking, can he play with Bruno? Can he play with Pogba? And I think there can be a good balance, because I think he can play in all three of like the midfield like kind of positions, like a 6 or an 8 or a 10. So I reckon he could have easily played in the midfield with McTominay and then Van de Beek and then Bruno like ahead. I reckon that would have been a good enough balance, but I don't know what Ollie's thoughts are with Van de Beek. I don't know if he has plans for next season but he needs a run of games, because he just hasn't adapted to the English game yet, because he's played 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 45 minutes in a random cup game against Luton Town. Like, he just needs a run of games to gel into the team, and then I think he could then reach the heights and even more than what we saw from him.
Yeah, and I mean, he played 90 minutes, and I don't quite remember the game that he played. I believe it was FA Cup, but I could be wrong, where he got 90 minutes, and lots of people were saying, God, this Van de Beek guy is very, very underwhelming. But what people cease to realise is that he's not getting the game time, and so you can understand if he's below par, if he's not performing at the same way he was at Ajax, because he was a regular first team starter for them. So to come to Man United, and I'm not saying, you know, Man United are a bigger club than Ajax, but, you know, I do think it's a discredit to him that he's not getting the game time that a player of his quality deserves. And so, I mean, in the summer, if Van de Beek wanted to leave, I wouldn't blame the guy. I really wouldn't, because there's players on that pitch. I'm not a fan of Fred. I think that Fred gets a lot more game time than maybe he deserves. So I just think in some ways Van de Beek deserves that spot, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's weird situations surrounding Van de Beek. You see you see the camera pan round to him on the bench, and he looks so depressed. Honestly,
He just looks so sad.
Yeah. Just so we don't. I would like to get into the Leicester Arsenal game for a little bit, and I'd love to hear from a United fan standpoint on Arsenal. Because we're kind of like in our own little bubble right now. We're like staying in 10th. We're like we're in a transition period. Yeah, maybe not. What does it look like from the outside? Is what I'm trying to say.
I think looking at it from the outside, it's a team that definitely needs recruitment, because there's games where you look really good, and then there's games where you look incredibly average. Like the game against Leeds, I mean, Leeds, the way they play, it's always an entertaining game whenever a team plays Leeds this season. But I think Arsenal played really well that game. They scored the goals from the chances they got. Aubameyang got his first Premier League hat-trick. And then in the second half, when Leeds tried to come back, they were able to hold off and hold on to their lead. And then they'll play a team, I don't know, near the bottom, and then they'll drop points, and they just look average again. So it seems to be the way that Arteta, I don't know if you can correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I don't watch them maybe as much as you would, but defensively they always seem to be compact, they always seem to be quite well set up defensively, but obviously with players like David Luiz, you can have embarrassing moments like a couple of times last season with red cards and such, but defensively I think they actually set up pretty well, and then with the threat of Aubameyang, they should be scoring plenty of goals, but I think there's just still maybe just one key player missing from that team, I think. But that's what I think from the outside looking in.
In my opinion, I almost feel like we have the squad and we have the manager. It's just like, at what point does it click, you know? You hear Pep Guardiola praising like Arteta in interviews. It's like, you know, he's saying like, Arteta, every game I've watched Arsenal, he's, you know, always the team that deserves to win. Sometimes football, you know, doesn't fall your way. So it's interesting to like pick out the areas we need to improve on. Aubameyang had like a really poor patch at the start of the season, like let like 3 goals in like the first half of the season. Like, what's that about? However, nonetheless, great result against Leicester over the weekend or last week. Leicester 1, Arsenal 3. I thought it was a great performance. Surprised me as well, because I wasn't actually happy with the team sheet. There was some players I would have been like, why is El Neni there? Why is no Bellerin? Which, by the way, I'm not a big fan of anymore. And yeah, Lacazette was up front, no Aubameyang. I'm starting to think that Arteta's maybe resting his players to put his eggs in the Europa League basket, which I'm quite happy about. Would you do the same if you were in Arteta's position? The league's pretty much over. We're not getting top 4. Europa League's our only route to the Champions League.
Yeah, I definitely would. I think Europa League's your only option. And I mean, you look at the teams that are up against you, ourselves included. But I mean, it's not doable for yourselves, but I still think it's a bit out of reach as well. So you may as well put all your eggs in one basket and go for the Europa League, to be honest. That's just me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, if you can still rest some players and get results like that against Leicester, then I think it could be a win-win for him. If you can find that good balance of being able to rest players and still get results in the league. So I think he's going to be smart about this, and I think it could work well for Arsenal in the coming end to the season.
I'd hope so anyway. But let's move on to our next segment of today's show. We've got some questions here for you, Ross. And
lovely.
Being the first guest ever on this podcast, it'd be interesting to hear your opinions.
Cool.
Yeah. So obviously, you're a United fan, like myself, and obviously there's a lot of debate about Ole and about what he can do with this Man United team. Do you think, in your opinion, that he could win plenty of trophies and then even a Premier League title as manager of Man United?
No. Honestly, looking at what Ole is capable of, I don't think so. I've always seen Ole as a transitional manager. I'm very much Ole in, but I think that Ole's work still isn't done yet. But I don't think that as a manager he's going to take us forward to a and have a Sir Alex Ferguson-esque run with the club. I just don't think so. I don't think he's capable. But I mean, listen, as a football fan, you always want to be proven wrong, don't you? But I just think it's a bit out of reach. As for the likes of Europa League and even domestic trophies, maybe. But if we're looking at the heights of success that we would have seen in years gone by, I just don't think Ollie's the man to take us through that. I don't know about you or yourself, but that's just me.
I want to clear up what you mentioned there. You said a Sir Alex Ferguson-esque run. Are you saying Ole won't go on a Sir Alex Ferguson-esque run, or are you saying Ole won't win a Premier League title whilst at United?
Both. Both. He's not gonna be at the club for 25 plus years or even 15. He's not going to be with us that long, but at the same time as well, I don't think we're going to win the Premier League with him. Talking about the Premier League, it's not that I don't think he could win it as a manager, and maybe that's a bit harsh, and maybe I should clear that up. But I just don't think the squad's ready, and I don't think the squad has the quality for the likes of City do, and without injuries, Liverpool do. But I don't know. I just don't think he's the manager to take us through that.
You just shot Ben's heart.
Yeah, no, I'm very much. I mean, like you said, you're Ole in as well. I'm very much Ole in. I'm never. I mean, I'll admit, for a while under Mourinho, I ended up being in a position where I couldn't back the manager anymore. But I always want to be in a position where I can back the manager, have faith in him 100%, and always back the team and everything else. I think United could win a title under Ole, but I think the issue would be is that maybe it would take too long to the point where the board then become a bit impatient and they're like, okay, you've had, 4 or 5 years at the club now, you've not won a big trophy yet. I mean, you may win a Carabao Cup or something like that in the next year or so, but I think it might reach a point where he hasn't won a big trophy in the next 2-3 years, and then it's like, okay, you've been here for pretty much 5 years, and you've not won a big achievement that would actually cause a lot of praise from fans and recognition from even other clubs, being that like he's proven them wrong. So it's a shame, because I do really, he's the type of guy that I really want him to succeed. Obviously, being a former player, being a large part of our history, obviously the 99 treble winning season, getting that winning goal in the Champions League, he's always going to be a huge part of the club. So no matter what happens, I'll always consider him like a United legend in ways, and I'll never change my opinion of him no matter how it ends. But I think it might reach a point where they'll have to change the manager, because he's just not got the experience and the, I don't know, like, it's just not the same as your Guardiolas or your Jurgen Klopps or Thomas Tuchel's or even Arteta, because Arteta's had been alongside Guardiola for a few years, so he's even in a better position than Ole is. So, but yeah, I don't think he could, but I really want him to though.
Yeah, I get what you mean. But I mean, I back the manager too. It's not a question that I definitely back the manager and I back the players, and I feel like if a proper fan, you should. There's no question of that. But I'm very much a realistic Man United fan. And I think no one could have anticipated at the time Sir Alex Ferguson was here that he would go on the run that he did. So it would be very, very naive of me to say that it's never going to happen. But at the same time, being realistic and seeing our track record, I don't think he's the manager to take us through to reach the heights that we once were. We will get there. I do believe that the likes of Bruno is going to be our star player in years to come. And I think he's going to commit his future to the club because he loves it here, and we love him. So there's no question of that. But I just think you're looking at manager options. I think there will be a change in years to come, especially if we don't get any silverware this season. I think all he needs to be winning something, whether it's Europa League or whatever.
Speaking of winning titles, what do you make of Harry Maguire? Do you think as long as Harry Maguire is a starting centre-back at Manchester United, United won't be winning a title anytime soon?
I'm very mixed about Harry Maguire. It's usually very negative. I think Harry Maguire is not a world class defender, and he's definitely not worth £80 million. But I just don't think he's the defender. He's nowhere near Vidic's quality. Same as Ferdinand, he's nowhere near that level of quality.
Well, you'd be crazy to even mention him in the same lines as Vidic
exactly.
and
And I think at times I look at Maguire and Lindelof together, and I think they're just like a bad marriage. They're two defenders who don't work well together. I love when Maguire and Bailly get together, and I'm sure I would love Lindelof and Bailly as well. But I think that Maguire and Lindelof are two very slow centre backs, and for me, and maybe I'm wrong, and I don't think so, but maybe I am. They look like they do the same job. And it's two centre backs who do the same job. Whereas with Maguire and Bailly has great recovery pace. That he's able to swoop back, and if anything, when we're hitting the counter, Maguire is too.
They complement each other.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they really do. And so I love it when he plays the two. Now, I still don't get why he plays Magaluf as Maguire and Lindelof are dubbed, but I just don't get the partnership. I don't get how they look to complement each other, because for me they don't. So, I mean, Maguire is going to be our centre back for years to come. I mean, he's our captain, so we're hardly going to get rid of him. But looking long term, but isn't that just not crazy? Like, I can't believe Harry Maguire is our captain. Harry Maguire is not a captain for me. He's just not a captain. Bruno Fernandes is a captain. David De Gea is a captain. These are big, massive changes that I can't affect. I can't have anything to do with. But I just think they're really wrong. And they're affecting us in games, But I could go on a whole spiel about Harry Maguire, but he's not the defender to take us through. In summary, he's not the defender.
Ben, you got anything to add to that?
I totally agree. I always hate it when I wait for the lineup to come out for a game, and then I read the lineup and I see Maguire's name and Lindelof's name in the same lineup, and it's annoying, because it's like, what logic is it to play two slow centre backs that make the same mistakes in games? They do the exact same in games, so that as soon as a good striker comes in, or a good front three, they can't cope at all. Like Bailly, I think Bailly and Lindelof are right now, with the current defensive options we have, are our best centre back partnership, because I think Lindelof is actually better at certain things than Maguire is, because I think Maguire is he's a lot slower than Lindelof is. I mean, Lindelof is still slow, but Maguire is like next level slow, and it's hard to watch at times. But yeah, exactly. So I don't like the Maguire. Like, I tried to like him. He has a good game, but then as soon as we play a big team against a good attack, then we just crumble. So
I feel a bit of hesitance when you guys talk about Harry Maguire when you're trying to criticize him, because it's like, we're trying to criticize him because he's not a good footballer, but he costs us 80 million and he's our club captain.
It's at a point where we'll never be able to sell him, because we'd end up getting a 60+ million loss on him, because we're not. Like,
he wouldn't go for half that.
No club's going to want to pay.
He wouldn't go for half that.
Exactly. Like, no one's gonna pay a good enough fee for him. No one's going to want to pay his wages that he's probably getting. I dread to think of what he's getting at United, because United seem to overpay everyone. I mean, I think Phil Jones is still getting 100k a week plus at Man United, and
that's insane.
He hasn't played for like pretty much a year now, and everyone's forgotten about him pretty much. I remember seeing an article like not long ago, or from a news conference, that Ole said he wants Phil Jones back from injury, and I was like, wait, Phil Jones is still at the club, like. And he's still getting 100k a week, when there's other players at other teams who are a lot better than him, who are getting half that, if not lower than that. So it baffles me what Man United pay for players, and then what they pay in terms of their wages. Like when we had Alexis Sanchez on like 500k a week, and look how he turned out. Like, it is painful to see, because I want to criticize. Like, it's easy to criticize him because he's not a good player, but at the same time, we can't do anything to help that, because he's going to be there. He's been selected as our captain. Ole seems to love him, so it's going to be a thing that we're just going to have to deal with for the next few years. And I just hope they sign a centre back in the summer that's not as injury prone as Bailly, that's still got that pace, and someone that's still young as well, because I think we need someone that can then gel into the team in a few years, and then when they reach their prime, then that's when our defence is really back to being solid, and it can actually be respected. Because right now our defence gets zero respect from anyone, because they know 80 million Maguire, that's a joke. Lindelof, he's slow and he can make plenty of mistakes. So I don't know. I like Ross said as well. Like, we could go on about this for ages because there's plenty of problems in our back line, but I don't want to go on and talk forever about it. But
I was just going to say that you were talking there about transfer. You would want to get a centre back in summer. For me, it would either be an option of both either Kanate or Varane. I know Varane's just that wee bit older, but even so, I wouldn't mind a bit of experience at centre back. Kanate maybe would be a really good option. He's quite speedy, so I don't know. I think either of those players, and they'll cost an arm and a leg, but I mean it's worth it to attempt to plug that hole at the back, because we're not going to win. The old saying: attack wins you games, and defence wins you premierships. Defence wins you titles. So we need to sort that, and for me, that's our priority at the minute. We shouldn't be looking at the likes of Jadon Sancho as a top priority signing. It should be a top quality centre back, a Virgil van Dijk-esque centre back that will be a rock in defence, and we don't have that at the minute. So
Ben and I have mentioned one name that could potentially fit into the United squad, and I believe he plays for Seville. Am I right?
yeah, Koundé. I don't know if you've heard about him or seen much about him, but he seems to be a player that's been linked with United recently, and admittedly I haven't seen much of him, but from what I've heard, he seems to be a very good centre back. Is he still quite relatively young as well? And I've heard he's got decent pace on him as well. So I mean, I think he could be realistic, but United never seem to do a sensible thing when it comes about. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking. He's 22. He is fairly young. So having someone that's like a better version of Eric Bailly, that's not as injury prone, just might be the best option for us, because, as you said yourself, we can't exactly get rid of Harry Maguire. We've made him the club captain. We've made that commitment. We can't really go back on it now. So I don't know. It angers me, it actually does, that we have that, we're stuck with this defence, when there were better players out there that we could have made as our sort of marquee signing, but one of them things.
For me, it's the fact that he's club captain, but Bruno is the obvious choice right now to be the club captain, but it's like it would in essence ruin the dressing room if right now Ole went and said, right, Harry Maguire, we've had enough, you're no longer club captain, here you go, Bruno, here's the armband.
But if you think about it though, like, not only is Bruno like our best player, but like if you listen to him in interviews or after games, like his mentality is above anyone else in the team by a country mile. Like he says he doesn't care about personal awards or scoring the most goals. Like, he just cares about winning. He doesn't care how the team does it. He just wants to win. And for me, that's the type of person you want as a captain. Someone that actually wants to win and will do anything to win. Whereas Maguire seems he's too soft, and I haven't seen enough of him leading the team properly like a captain obviously should. Whereas Bruno would. Like, you see Bruno wherever he is, he's looking around, doing 360 turns everywhere. He's shouting at players, telling them where to go, telling them where to put the ball. Like, that's a proper leader. And the fact that he's not the obvious choice for captain, like, it does baffle me a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, he reminds me in that sense. Now, I'm not saying in any other sense, but in the way that he's able to bark at players and tell them where to go. That's Roy Keane, and that's what we need. That Roy Keane type player is what we need right now. And we, and Bruno, we have that in Bruno, but I just don't think. Obviously, he's not the captain. I just wish he was given more free rein to do that. But.
We're saying as if Ole doesn't agree with us, though. But I can guarantee you, if he was sitting here with us having this conversation, he'd absolutely say Bruno Fernandes would be the perfect captain. But it's too late. That's the issue.
Yeah, I reckon we just signed them in the wrong order. If we got Bruno first, then Bruno would be captain, and that'd be set in stone. But the fact we paid that huge fee for Maguire and we signed him first, it's like you just can't do that now because. it would cause unrest in the dressing room. And even though people would agree that Bruno should be captain, but I think the way that it would happen, like especially now, like near the end of a season, like it just wouldn't work. But I just wish like Bruno, like we didn't set a proper captain like until we got Bruno, because then like, it's just so obvious that Bruno should be captain. Like it's just frustrating, like to look at it. But
It is.
we just have to deal with that.
Okay, so next question I have for you guys is, what players would you pick in the world right now that you believe would fill in the gaps at Manchester United with Ole in charge, realistically, that would push them for a title challenge, or even perhaps win the title in the next few years?
Are we talking just...
You mentioned Varane. You mentioned Varane earlier, and Konate. Any other positions?
I mean, I think your dream right wing signing is Jadon Sancho, isn't it? And I think he really would strengthen the squad. He's really young, and he's already world class at his age. But at the same time, it's, as I said, it's not the priority. But if I think the three positions really that we need to be strengthening, and in this order, would realistically be centre back at number 1, and a very solid CDM number 2, and then a good right winger at number 3. And I mean, apart from that, we have good quality. We have world class players in this team. Rashford on his day is so good, and Mason Greenwood for the age that he is amazing. Martial, I just hope returns to the form that he is capable of. But really,
The next year.
well, no, not for me, no. But
I remember when he burst on the scene and he scored against Man City, and they were like, Martial, here he is.
Oh God. But yeah, I mean, in that order, and for those positions, you're realistically looking at the likes of maybe a Koundé or a Konate at centre back. CDM, I'm not sure, and maybe that's something we can discuss, but I'm not really sure about the CDM options that are out there that we could realistically get that maybe strengthen the squad. So maybe what do you think, Ben? A good CDM for the squad?
I've always liked Declan Rice, but the only issue with Declan Rice is he's at another Premier League club, and because he's an English international, like English tax and all that, like you could be looking at another 70 to 80 million, like, because West Ham won't sell him for cheap. I mean, is he not already like West Ham captain?
Yeah.
Now that like Mark Noble is like, because he's like reaching the end of his career, he's not playing as much, so they've handed the armband to Declan Rice. I think he'd be a really good signing, but he would just cost a lot of money because he's in the Premier League already, so he's like a rival to us in a way. And then because he's English as well, the English players seem to go for a lot more. But Declan Rice would be my first CDM like choice.
Yeah. No, well that's good. So say hypothetically Declan Rice, and then at right wing for me, then it's Jadon Sancho. You imagine a front three of the likes of a Rashford, Greenwood, and a Jadon Sancho. Like that's you're talking their best front three in the league, really. Without question.
You say that. I hate to bring it up, but there was like a 5 year in a row period where United fans on Twitter were like posting pictures of like your Falcao, your like there's like the big front 5 of Manchester United.
Yeah,
it was like Falcao, Di Maria, this, that, and they've all done nothing.
But
obviously I don't think that's the case with Jadon Sancho. I think he'll be great.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at the players that we've signed. Lukaku was unreal at Everton, and we signed him, and he was generally looking at his United tenure, he was absolutely terrible. He was really underwhelming for the quality of player that he is. Alexis Sanchez was another one. 2 really good players that we signed for a lot of money and just didn't work out. So is it something about United as a club that encourages that, or I don't know. That's what worries me.
Yeah,
that's what worries me about future signings. We're getting all worked up about the likes of a Jadon Sancho or a Koundé. Are they going to come to United and suffer the same effect?
Yeah, because you look at Lukaku, he was unreal at Everton. He comes to United, so underwhelming, moves away to Inter, and he's now one of the best strikers in the world again. So I mean, I would hate for that to happen to a player like Jadon Sancho because he's still very young. Like, the levels he could reach, I mean, it's up to himself, really. It's about how much he really wants it, to be honest. You can clearly see his potential. And if he can reach the heights he is already and can, like, further that, then at United he could be an unreal signing. So it would be painful to watch a player like Jadon Sancho end up, like, turning into a flop at United and then moving away to, I don't know, back to Borussia Dortmund or Bayern or PSG, and then, like, just taking the league by storm and topping the assist charts, the goal charts. I don't know, it would just really be painful because United have had history with that.
He's getting a lot of assists in the Bundesliga this season, so that might be the type of player that he becomes. He's more assists than goals, so we'll just wait and see.
Speaking of Inter Milan and Jadon Sancho, Europa League matches and Champions League matches are underway. Obviously, United were playing Real Sociedad, Arsenal played Benfica. Both through to the next stage. Manchester United have AC Milan. Love to know your thoughts on that. Arsenal have Olympiacos. Good ties? No?
Yep, both very good ties. Difficult ties. I've seen people argue already that they think that possibly the winner of United against AC Milan could potentially be the winner of the competition, because I've looked at it and I've looked at the teams available, and I've always said that AC Milan were probably the team that would challenge United the most. Not saying that any other teams aren't good, but in terms of, like, the strongest opposition, I would have said that AC Milan are the strongest this year. So I can see why people say that, but at the same time, like, you have to take it game by game. You can't just think that if they beat AC Milan, then they're going to win the competition, because they could still come up against Arsenal in the later rounds. There's still Roma, Spurs. There's still plenty of good teams in there that could beat United. So, but I think this is probably the toughest draw they could have gotten, and it seems to happen a lot. But it'll be a good tie. I think it'll be entertaining, and I think Ibra is going to be injured for the first leg, but I don't know. It'd be good to see Ibra against United again. So, what are your thoughts, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to see him facing against us again. You raise an interesting point about the winner of this game going on to actually win the competition, because, as you say, AC Milan might challenge us the most. There are some really good teams still in that aren't AC Milan, so I don't know if I think that, but at the same time, I'm a bit worried. I haven't really been following much of AC Milan's games this season, but I just think that realistically they are a decent enough team, and I worry about our performances in Europe. I didn't think we played particularly well in the second leg against Sociedad, and so I worry about facing the likes of AC Milan, because I think at the minute, and I think we have the tendency to rely on individual performances, as I've mentioned. So I'm just a bit worried about a team of this calibre. And I really, really want to win the Europa League. I really do. I think second place in Europa League is an unreal season, and arguably the best season since Ferguson's departure. So, listen, we'll just wait and see, but I am worried. I have a gut feeling it's not going to go our way, to be honest.
I personally don't think United are going to win the Europa League, because there are teams in there like Arsenal genuinely fighting for their lives in the Europa League just so they can get that Champions League spot. I think United are obviously a real contender, but they've got one eye on the league, and usually it's really difficult to do well in both. I mean, it will be a shocking season if United lose out on the top four now, being in the position they are. I think Ole would be looking at that.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, he's going to prioritise the league instead of the Europa League.
Yeah.
Maintaining second and even third place, instead of Europa League. I can understand that, but at the same time, I think Ole has that same hunger and drive for silverware. He hasn't won anything while he's been at the club. Arteta, as you say, he has silverware under his belt. So I think that Ole has some form of that drive, to have that for the club, even though he's keeping his eye on the league. So I just think with the likes of the Europa League, I would love to see Donny playing in that AC Milan game. I would love a big occasion for him to step up and sort of, right, this is a massive game. perform, go out there and do it. And I think that sort of motivation and mindset, instead of playing him for 90 minutes in, either the FA Cup or Carabao Cup, can't remember what game it was, but something of this calibre for Donny, I think would be a great way to get him to step up, and would be a great incentive for him to show the quality that he's capable of.
Don't forget, Donny van de Beek has plenty of Champions League experience under his belt as well, when he was at Ajax. So
yeah, exactly. But to me then, and I know we've already discussed this, I'm not going to get back into it, but it's like, he doesn't know that he should be. That's why I really, really vehemently believe he should be playing in these games. He really should.
Yeah.
And he should be trusted as a good number 6 and even a good number 8.
Yeah, I said this earlier, and I didn't say it earlier, sorry, but I just came to my mind. Like, what if Ole didn't actually want this signing? Like, what if he didn't think about Donny van de Beek? Like, what if the board just, the chairman just said, we've seen a player, Donny van de Beek. He's available for a reasonable price for the player that he is. So I think we're going to sign him. And then Ole was looking at it, thinking, well, I wanted Jadon Sancho. I wanted someone else. But then he's come, so then Ole just has to, put a smile on it and just say, like, yeah, we wanted Donny. But then obviously looking at this season, he clearly hasn't been important to the team. Like, he hasn't played him in any important games. He hasn't given him enough games to let him gel into the team. So in a way, I'm kind of thinking now, that's like, what if Ole didn't even want him?
He actually gave the board a 3-man shortlist. It was Kanate, Koundé and Varane, and they brought in Van de Beek.
Yeah, but and that's all well and good, but in the same way that we have to back the manager because he's our manager, the manager has to back his own players. And so not giving him that game time is a discredit to his own ability. It's not like, he gave him the 3-man shortlist and they gave him a championship quality player. Like, he's an unreal player and he's capable of so much, leaving the only club that he's played for, Ajax, to come to Manchester United and having him bench warming for his entire time. Like, that's not what Van de Beek is capable of. I know he's capable of more, and so that should reflect in his game time, and it's not in the minute, and that's a big thing that I would criticise Ole for.
Yeah. Speaking of Van de Beek and his Champions League experience, PSG Barca 4-1. To be honest, in the last episode when Ben and I were predicting, I already knew that PSG were absolutely going to destroy Barca. Barca are no longer the team they used to be. PSG, even without Neymar, I was like, no, they've got this. And Mbappe showed up with a hat-trick. Incredible.
Imagine if the fans were there as well in the Camp Nou, or Camp Nou, however you pronounce it. But imagine if there was 90,000 plus Barcelona fans in that stadium and they watch Mbappe score a hat-trick against them. Like, I can just imagine him silencing that crowd, and it would have been so good to see, because Mbappe is an unbelievable player. A question that I had that I don't know, I can get your quick opinions on now. Like, do you think a player like Mbappe and Haaland can reach the kind of Messi and Ronaldo standards? Not the same as in winning as many Ballon d'Ors as they have, but the type of like numbers they do in their career with like goals and assists and like success and trophies and stuff. Like, do you think they can do that? Because I mean, Mbappe certainly showed he could by scoring a hat trick at Barcelona's home ground. So,
oh yeah, I think they can reach their. I don't think they're looking to reach as you say, those sort of awards and Ballon d'Or things. They reach their own standards and they set their own standards. But when you compare them to the likes of Messi, Ronaldo, at each other's like ages, I think realistically they're on target to become the two big players. It was always talked about, who would sort of take over as maybe the biggest player in the world, when two biggest players in the world, when Messi and Ronaldo eventually do retire. I think the future is Mbappe and Haaland. I think that's where the future is. And coming up from them, Jadon Sancho. I think, but talking about Mbappe and Haaland exclusively, those players, they're just ridiculous. And I know there's more to come. So it'll just be interesting which clubs they end up at,
Well, as these youngsters are on the rise, your Messi's and Ronaldo's careers are unfortunately taking an end. Do you think Messi has one more club in his belt before he retires? If he leaves Barca, do you think he'd go to somewhere like PSG, City, Bayern, or maybe he'd go to the MLS?
The two teams that I think he'd most likely go to are probably City and PSG. mainly because of their willingness to pay the wages Messi would maybe want, and also just, I don't know, I feel like with City, if Pep's still around, it could be like a reunion with Pep, and with PSG, you could then go back working with Pochettino, Argentinian himself, and then also reunite with Neymar, and then play with Mbappe for a season or two before he retires, or however long he's going to play. So I think it's those two teams most likely. I don't want him to go to City, because City right now they're amazing already. They're better than everyone else at this current time. Their squad is filled with so much quality. So to add Messi to that, no thanks. So I think PSG. I think that would probably, I don't know, it might interest him more, because he gets to reunite with one of his good friends, Neymar. And kind of when you're at PSG, you're guaranteed pretty much a league title every year, and like the domestic cups in France, and with the front like attack with including Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi, like they could go win the Champions League, to be honest. So I don't know. We'll just see what happens. I think he'll leave Barca at the end of the season, though, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I would like to think. I mean, the perfect story would be to start your career at Barcelona and end it at Barcelona, really, because he feels to me like a one club player. And I think it would be a real pity if he was bought out by the likes of Man City and came over for the money. I know he's had his rows with Barca and the higher ups, but at the same time, I don't think that's maybe I'm looking at this. They're not the fairy tale ending, really. So to me, I think he should be ending his club at ending his footballing career at Barcelona. But however, I think he may leave. But part of me doesn't. I don't buy into this. Pep Guardiola reunion at Man City. I don't buy into it. I don't think he's not destined for a Premier League club. I don't think. Now, obviously, I could be wrong, but I just don't think he's destined for a Premier League club. I could see PSG. You were talking there, and that sort of Neymar reunion. I could really see that, and then under Pochettino, obviously the Argentinian link. But I just don't see a Guardiola and Messi reunion. But as I say, I could be wrong. But there you go.
Just touching on the Champions League again, do you have any predictions on who's going to win it this year?
Yeah, I mean, in the last episode, I predicted that unless they met each other in rounds coming up to it, that it could be an Atletico Madrid PSG final. But looking at it now, Chelsea got an away goal against Atletico. It looks like they can go through, especially with how well Tuchel's done since he's come in. I think they'll be okay. I still believe PSG will reach the final. And Bayern Munich, they seem to be comfortable in their tie as well. So I'm now edging more towards another PSG Bayern Munich final again, unless they meet each other in leading up rounds again. So, but just looking at the way that PSG and Bayern Munich have controlled their ties so well and dominated their ties, that I don't think there can be really an argument against them being in the final for the second season in a row, unless of course they meet each other in the quarterfinal or the semi-final. But that's me personally, and if it does go to that final again, I think PSG could tip it this year. I think they could win it this year.
Yeah, I was just about to actually agree with you. I think a Bayern PSG final could look very realistic. However, I could see a Bayern and Dortmund final. I wouldn't rule that out either. But yeah, more than likely Bayern PSG.
That was exactly my thoughts. Although I am gonna tip not PSG, Bayern Munich for the Champions League again. I think they're gonna win it 2 years in a row. But that pretty much is us done for today's podcast. Anyways, it's been great having you on today, Ross. Are there any links you'd like to share?
You can follow me on Twitter, RossWTD18, and if you wanted to follow the United Journal, we are at the UTD Journal.
Yeah, sure, I'll add that to the description.
Perfect.
That's fine. As always, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes, and be sure to look out on Wednesdays for our new episodes.
Feel free to leave any feedback on our 4th episode. Like, share, subscribe, and see you guys later.
See you next time.
All the best. Thank you.